And the groom, who's now being treated for depression and post-traumatic stress, is suspected of organising her murder. In London today, a judge ruled that Shrien Dewani is well enough to be extradited to South Africa to face trial, something her family have been fighting for.
For us, it's all about Annie. It's all about finding out what happened to her. This battle has just begun for us. Look at my mom, look at my dad. You can see on their faces, they're struggling every single day with this. They've lost a daughter and yeah.
What are your feelings towards Shrien Dewani?
I don't want to think about it.
It was November 2010 when the Dewanis took their luxury honeymoon at an exclusive hotel in Cape Town. But late one night, on the way back from a restaurant, their taxi was hijacked and Annie was shot in the neck. The South African police became suspicious when CCTV showed Shrien Dewani meeting the taxi driver a couple of days later. Mr. Dewani says he was simply paying him for driving, but Zola Tongo told a court he was paid for organising the killing. He's been jailed for 18 years. The South African authorities have been trying to extradite Shrien Dewani ever since, but he has claimed he isn't well enough to go. He's being treated at this mental health unit in Bristol, where he's said to spend hours every day in a camper van in the grounds. He's also allowed to visit the family's gated home nearby. His family issued a statement from here today saying they intend to appeal against this decision. They insist Shrien Dewani does want to go back to South Africa to clear his name, but they say he isn't yet ready to be extradited. And they have concerns about the treatment he would receive there. But tonight the South African authorities have offered reassurance.
I think our facilities are at a standard, at a level that can actually take care of his health concerns. And that's exactly what convinced the court. You know, the court was happy that he will really be properly taken care of.
But nearly 3 years after the wedding, there are still more hearings to come. The honeymoon murder case is far from closed.
So, John, you're outside the psychiatric unit where Shrien Dewani is being treated. Just how soon do you think extradition could take place?
Well, he will spend tonight here just as he has the last few months. And realistically, he is not getting on a plane to South Africa in the next few days or even weeks. This could still be a long process. Why? Well, his parents have got 14 days in which to lodge an appeal, and they've said they're going to do that. Then we assume there will be a hearing. If they don't like the result of that hearing, they could potentially choose to go to the European Court of Human Rights. So this could take many more months yet. Their argument in that appeal is going to be this. They will say the judge is wrong. He said today that Shrien Dewani is better now, that he's ready to go back to South Africa but not fit to enter a plea. The family say if he's not ready to enter a plea, if he's not fit to enter a plea, he's not ready to go back. But look, all this depends on his condition. If there's any deterioration or relapse, we could be back a few steps and there could be even more delays. George.
All right, John, thanks very much. Now it's off to the grandparents for the new prince. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have left Kensington Palace and taken their baby to the Middleton family home in Berkshire. Before leaving, they had visits from the Queen and Prince Harry. Our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell reports.
After just one night in a royal residence, the baby was taken by his parents to Berkshire. William and Catherine left Kensington Palace, the baby seat just visible in the vehicle next to Kate. There was a wave from her as they set off for the Middleton family's recently acquired estate near Bucklebury. After the very public moments last night, when the couple brought the baby out from St Mary's Hospital, their hope now is for privacy. Kensington Palace has requested that they be left alone. Before leaving London, the couple and their son were visited by more members of William's family. Prince Harry has been to see him, and this morning the Queen was driven to Kensington Palace to meet her great-grandson for the first time. Last night she'd been at a reception at Buckingham Palace, where guests said she'd been talking about the size of the new baby. He was £8 6 ounces at birth. He may be a big baby, but he's still without a name. The Queen spent half an hour at Kensington Palace. Perhaps names were discussed. She will understand their significance.
There's so much attached to a royal name, to the name of a monarch, you know, Victorian values, Georgian architecture. You've got to think of initials, William Arthur George, possibly not.
The Cambridges, a family unit whose priority at the moment is having time together and privacy. And that desire for privacy really cannot be overstated. The fact that they've headed so quickly to the Middleton estate is another indication, I think, of William's determination to do this in the way that he thinks is best and to put down very clear lines beyond which they hope the media will not trespass. Now, turning to the question of names, well, the Queen, one imagines, knows what's in their minds, and I think that quite soon we will also know. If we get any news, obviously, between now and the end of the 6 o'clock news, we will bring it to you.
All right, Nick, we'll wait for that. Thank you. NHS Accident and Emergency Department in England could reach crisis point this winter. That's a warning from MPs who found that fewer than 1 in 5 departments had the recommended level of consultant cover. NHS England says it recognises more work needs to be done. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes reports.
MPs describe an emergency care system operating under sustained stress. The government's solution, urgent care boards to improve local performance, have no clear direction, and staff levels are not sufficient to meet demand. Only 17% of emergency departments have adequate consultant cover, and the MPs warn of a looming crisis this winter.
NHS England ought to ensure that there is in place by the end of September this year a plan in every locality to ensure that the demands that we can predict will be placed on the system this winter are going to be met.
Waiting times in emergency departments across England have been rising as more people seek treatment. It's a similar picture right across the UK. Doctors say that some patients arrive with only minor ailments. That couldn't be said of Trevor Jessup, admitted to the busy A&E in Barnsley Hospital with chest pains.
They seem to be dashing about a bit, you know. They don't seem to be walking steady at all. They're very busy by the looks of things, yeah, certainly.
And there's a problem with recruitment, putting pressure on staff numbers. Many younger doctors no longer want to work in such a stressful and demanding environment.
The hours are often antisocial, and by that I mean night times, evenings, and you can expect to work 2 or 3 weekends in a month.
Emergency departments are facing a variety of different problems, including more patients coming through the door and difficulties recruiting mid-grade doctors to actually come and work here. But these issues can't be solved in isolation because emergency departments are part of a much bigger, more complicated health system. MPs say problems with the troubled NHS 111 urgent care helpline may also have led to more people arriving at emergency departments.
Okay, so this is part of your health check. We're just going to check your blood pressure.
The solution may lie in managing the demands placed on A&E. That means improving access to more local health services.
We're talking about using pharmacists more. We're talking about opening up GP practices for longer so that individuals don't have to work more, but patients have that accessibility that they want.
The recent hot weather has seen a spike in the numbers attending emergency departments, but the real pressure starts to build in November, just 12 weeks away. NHS England is conducting a review of urgent and emergency care, expected to be published in the autumn. But the evidence in today's report suggests the system risks collapse over the coming winter unless action is taken soon. Dominic Hughes, BBC News, Barnsley.
A 19-year-old man has been found guilty of the manslaughter of 4 siblings in a fire at their home in Freckleton in Lancashire. Rhys Smith, who was also 19, died while trying to rescue his 4-year-old twin sisters, Holly and Ella, and Jordan, who was 2, in January last year. Ed Thomas reports.
4-year-old twins Holly and Ella Smith were said to dote on their younger brother Jordan. He was just 2 when all 3 died. Their eldest sibling, Rhys, lost his life trying to save them. The fire began here as the children slept. Today, police released these pictures of what was left of their bedroom. Investigators found their clothes had been set on fire, deliberately by a family friend. But as everyone ran out, their brother Rhys ran into the flames.
I think he's a true hero. He's done me and the family proud.
And how have you been left after the fire and after losing Reese?
Just ripped apart now. I've lost my son, I've lost my best friend.
Today, this man, Dyson Allen, was found guilty of killing all four. He was said to have been fascinated by fire and starting fires. The court was told that before the fire, Dyson Allen was alone in the upstairs part of the Dormer bungalow, and after he lit it, he waited before running downstairs shouting fire. He then made this 999 call.
The fire's upstairs. Right, but is the fire where the children are? Yeah, it's in the room where they're sleeping.
This has been one of the most tragic and significant murder inquiries that Lancashire has seen for a number of years, which has left a family and a community devastated by their loss.
Dyson Allen has never said why he killed all four. He'll be sentenced in September. Ed Thomas, BBC News, Freckleton.
A teenager who lost her life trying to save a friend who got into difficulty in a fast-flowing river yesterday has been described as a hero. The bodies of both girls, Tonibeth Purvis and Chloe Fowler, have been recovered from the River Wear. Danny Savage is in Washington for us now. Danny.
George, this is the River Wear behind me. It may look calm, tranquil and inviting, but it has lots of hidden hazards. It's tidal, and yesterday those hazards proved to be lethal.
I wish nothing but the best for you too.
A heartbreaking riverside vigil at the very spot where two of their friends drowned last night. 14-year-old Chloe Fowler got into difficulty in the River Wear yesterday afternoon. It's understood her friend, 15-year-old Tonibeth Purvis, died trying to save her. Friends say Chloe wasn't confident in the water.
She couldn't swim. She wasn't like... I don't know how to explain it, but she's not one of them girls that does silly things. She's not a silly girl. She's a really smart girl.
The two teenagers were part of a group of friends who'd gone down to this local beauty spot where, despite the warning signs, people often went in. When the girls disappeared into the water here, there was panic. Other youngsters who were with them then also jumped in to try and rescue them. And then there were soon adults on the scene pulling those young people out of the water. One of them was an off-duty police officer who today said he was doing just what anyone would have done. A desperate search by more than 100 rescuers ended late last night when the tide dropped and the girls' bodies were found.
It's very hot, it's the school holidays, teenagers are milling around and water's tempting, it is, but you know, this is a big, strong river with currents. There's debris, there's other things in it that you don't see under the water.
We love you, Chloe and Tony.
A large group of teenagers are now faced with life without two friends lost in their local river. Danny Savage, BBC News, Washington.
And the time is 6:15. Our top story this evening. A court ruled that Shrien Dewani should be sent to South Africa to face trial for the honeymoon murder of his wife. And still to come, Alan Partridge meets his fans at the film premiere in Norwich.
Later on BBC London, we hear from a leading British Muslim accused of war crimes in Bangladesh more than 4 decades ago. And Arsenal will hold talks with the controversial striker Luis Suarez after making a club record transfer bid.
Health campaigners have criticised a decision not to roll out the first vaccine against meningitis B. Government advisers say the vaccine, unlike jabs against other types of meningitis, isn't cost effective and the level of protection is unclear. Now, more than 1,800 people contract meningitis B every year. 1 in 10 who contract the disease will die, and 1 in 10 will be left significantly disabled or brain damaged. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh looks at the reasons behind the decision.
It is the most feared of childhood infections. 7-year-old Tilly became dangerously ill within hours of contracting meningitis B and lost both hands and some of her toes, all of which might have been prevented by a vaccine.
She was 15 months old in sheer agony, and as a parent to have to watch your child go through that and screaming and shaking with pain is just horrific. If there's anything out there that can stop this disease and another family going through what we've been through with Tilly, then it needs to be done.
Meningitis can inflame the lining of the brain and spinal cord and cause blood poisoning. This was one of several trials which showed the vaccine produced a strong immune response when babies were immunised.
Which patients are you looking after?
But how many cases of the disease it might prevent is still uncertain. That's why the committee which advises government on vaccines has said it's not cost effective. Doctors hope the barriers will be overcome.
As a paediatrician, if I had a way of preventing even one case of meningitis and septicemia caused by this bug, I would like to take it. And so it's disappointing for all of us who've been involved in vaccine development or have looked after these patients.
The vaccine was licensed in Europe in January, but so far no country has recommended its introduction.
The meningitis B vaccine could be cost effective if it prevented the bug spreading from person to person. But the only way we'll ever know that is if the vaccine is introduced. It's a catch-22 situation.
So what next? It may take powerful campaigning from the likes of Johnny Peacock, whose disability is a result of meningitis B, to make progress. Last night he won gold at the World Championships in France.
It does affect lives. It affected mine, and it's affected many more people that I know and that I've come across. So it's a shame, but hopefully things will change in the future and there'll be another opportunity for it to come aboard.
The NHS can't afford every treatment, but families like Tilly say the vaccine is vital to protect other children from this devastating disease. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
More now on the new royal baby. Earlier, our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell said he might have some news during the programme, and he has the latest for us now, and he's still at Buckingham Palace. Nick.
Well, George, you'll be dead chuffed because it is George Alexander Louis. This is the statement from Kensington Palace. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are delighted to announce that they have named their son George Alexander Louis. The baby will be known as His Royal Highness Prince George of Cambridge. So a very traditional name, a reference there, of course, to George VI, the Queen's father. Louis, a reference perhaps to Lord Louis of Mountbatten. But those are the names, George Alexander Louis. He is Prince George.
And Nick, they were rather quicker than they were in Prince William's own case.
Yes, and one must imagine, George, that they have been thinking about this for some weeks, perhaps even months, and one imagines that they will have had names for either a boy or a girl, consulting perhaps with close members of the royal family. They've opted for tradition, haven't they? George, very much a favourite name within the royal family. Alexander too, that is said to have been a favourite name on the Middleton side, and Louis, again, a name with a historical resonance in royal terms, perhaps that in consultation with William's father, Prince Charles, whose, of course, great-uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten, was. So, once again, it is very traditional choices. Only 3 names. Perhaps in the past we had been expecting perhaps 4 names. William himself has 4 names, Prince Charles has 4 names, but they've been opting just for those 3 names. George, Alexander, Louis.
All right, names we'll be getting used to, no doubt. Nick, thanks very much. Now, it was an announcement that led to a storm of protest when it was decided that the only woman on our currency was to be replaced by Winston Churchill. But today there was a U-turn. It was announced that the author Jane Austen will now grace our £10 notes from 2017. The new governor of the Bank of England made the announcement at Austen's family home in Chawton, Hampshire this afternoon. And our economics editor, Stephanie Flanders, is there for us now. Stephanie.
Yes, thanks, Jules. I mean, there has been such a lot of interest in our new Bank of England Governor, Mark Carney, since he started the job at the start of this month, and people wondering what he might do to help the recovery, if anything. I'm sure we will hear more about that from him in the weeks and months to come. But his first big public outing turned out to be not about the economy. He did have a chat with local businesses here in Hampshire earlier in the day, but his main focus, as you suggest, in coming here to the village of Chawton was to reassure us that there would indeed still be a woman on our banknotes in a few years' time. It's the woman who lived in the house behind me. Jane Austen said it was a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. The new Bank of England governor doesn't need a wife, but the bank has been in want of a great woman, and here she is. There's been a parade of Britain's great and good on our banknotes since the 70s, but since 1994, only one woman, the social reformer Elizabeth Fry. When the bank announced a new Winston Churchill note for 2016 onwards, replacing Fry, they were surprised to find it caused quite a stink. The new Jane Austen £10 note announced today will get a woman back into circulation again, but only from 2017. Why is it you think that you've taken this so much more seriously than your predecessor?
The issue was that it created a misimpression that there would be a scenario, or there might be a scenario, where there was no female on any of the 4 notes that we published. We listened, we heard those concerns, and we acted quickly to make an announcement, which we would have made in any event.
The woman leading the campaign to keep females on our banknotes says the bank wasn't returning her calls before Mark Carney arrived. He asked to meet her on his first day.
For me, the important thing about the whole campaign really was always for them to change the decision-making process, because that's why we keep getting situations where we get white men everywhere at the top of places. It's because of the way decisions are taken. It's because of the criteria that we use to decide on what's valuable, what we consider as good in society.
They were pleased to hear the news on Jane Austen's local high street, where her brother once owned a bank. Those that cared at all.
In terms of the way I use it, I don't really care who's on the front of the note. It doesn't really make an opinion. Oh, of course. I think everybody does.
Do you think it's important to have women on the
Oh,
banknote?
absolutely. They're as equally as important as men, for goodness sake.
Well, we used to have Florence, didn't we? Florence Nightingale. So it's time to have another lady back on the scene.
The great theorist of evolution, Charles Darwin, might appreciate the irony that his face will now be replaced by Jane Austen's. The Bank of England has evolved. Now they just need to find a woman for that 9-man committee that sets interest rates. Stephanie Flanders, BBC News in Hampshire.
From Hollywood to Cannes and London, film premieres usually take place in the most glamorous cities in the world. But the first screening of the new Alan Partridge film, Alpha Papa, has taken place in the character's home city, Norwich. Steve Coogan appeared on the red carpet in character. Our arts correspondent, David Silito, was there.
Norwich, famous for mustard, shoes, and Alan Partridge.
Then we bring the cows in, get them milked by 6 a.m. So all
You're listening to This Morning's Farmer. Go on, you were talking about cow bringing in.
Alan is, of course, a fictional disc jockey, the comic creation of Steve Coogan, a lovable buffoon in a sports casual safari suit, and also a fictional resident of Norwich.
Norwich has been voted Norfolk City of Culture for the 11th year running, as you know. Just think about that. You know, that's actually, yeah, and a lot of that, of course, is down to me, but it's also down to people like Kathy Dennis. She's from Norwich. Mylene Klaas from Hearsay.
And it goes on. It's why the film premiere took place here, and it's why there are going to be Alan tours of Norwich. This I had to see. And so we begin the tour, Nick. This is
London Street. It was the first pedestrianised street in England.
And of course, Alan hates pedestrianisation. And this, Nick, is the Museum of Mustard, another great Partridge landmark. And this, the largest 6-day-a-week open-air market in the UK. And no one's more supportive than Norfolk Radio's Wally Webb, who is perhaps unkindly compared to Mr. P himself.
I'm flattered, really, in a way that people do liken me to him.
You embrace your inner Partridge.
I do. You have to. You let it all hang out.
So, Staines as Ali G, Slough the Office, Norwich, Alan. A joke they're making the most of. David Silito, BBC News, Norwich.
Time for the weather now with Thomas Schaffernacker. Hello.
Hello. Nothing new on the weather front. It's been another warm day across the southeast, 28 degrees.
A muggy night on the way, and also some quiet weather actually heading towards many western areas of the UK, in particular Wales. Could be quite a dose of rain this coming night. So let's have a look at the scene then as we go through the early hours of Thursday morning. So here's the rain sweeping across Wales and then ending up across northern parts of England and southern Scotland. Look at the temperatures, we're in the high teens this coming night, so muggy air still coming in from the south. Here's the rush hour then. So I think the heavier rain across Scotland will be through the lowlands and towards the south, for example, in the southwest. Also Northern Ireland getting some rain. 16 degrees here, so wet and warm. And also warm and wet across the northern parts of England here, around 18 Celsius. Towards the south, I think the rain shouldn't be too heavy. We're talking about spots of rain. And in fact, most of us probably just waking up to those low, grey, murky skies with that humidity in the air. And temperatures again of around 18 degrees in many areas. Now the skies will break, the sunshine will come out across the south, and it actually will be a decent day. But from the very far North Midlands northwards, so into Scotland and Northern Ireland too, thunderstorms will be breaking out, and some of them could be quite torrential with frequent lightning and even some hail too. Friday, more or less the same broadly speaking. There will be some sunshine around and still quite warm, around 25 in London, with 1 or 2 thunderstorms in the north of the country. And then through the weekend, actually a potential for some pretty severe thunderstorms across the, we think, southeast of the country. They will be drifting in from France, and this is the track of the storms. We're thinking the southeast and East Anglia, but still a bit uncertain because the storms may track a little bit further westward. So you get the picture. It's this sort of southeastern quadrant of the United Kingdom that's at risk of getting some big, powerful thunderstorms. That's a way off, though.
Thomas, thanks very much. Thank you. And a quick reminder of the breaking news we just brought to you. In the last few minutes, Buckingham Palace has announced the name of the royal baby. The new Prince of Cambridge has been named George Alexander Louis. That's all from the BBC's News at 6, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we can now join the BBC's news teams where you are.